Hello, and I'm hearing that we're starting the show right now. Yes, I've got a word in my headphones, my earplugs. No, we're gonna start this show. Welcome to this week's podcast broadcast of This Week in Science, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. As I like to say before we get started with the real show, the live show. If you are watching on one of the streaming services, you are watching the live, uncut, or previously live, uncut, unedited, maybe full of errors. I don't know. Hopefully not. Hopefully everything goes smoothly. There's nothing for Rachel, our editor, to edit, and the podcast is exactly the same as what is happening right now, except this part is gone because this is just this part of the show where I say the podcast is edited. This isn't. Please subscribe to This Week in Science. It's time for you to share, get us in the algorithms, make sure that everybody is coming to join the show right now. You ready? You ready, Justin?
Do it. Let's go.
Okay, we're going to make this happen. Okay, starting the show in 3, 2, this is TWIS. This Week in Science, episode number 1023. Recorded on Wednesday, July 23rd, 2025, guided by science. Hey everyone, I'm Dr. Kiki, and tonight on the show, we will fill your head with misinformation, replication, and screaming plants. But first.
Disclaimer. Science tends to be irreverent of pre-existing beliefs. Overturning the Earth-centric universe with one that centers around the sun upset thousands of years of well-reasoned observations and many mythical contemplations. Later discoveries showed that the sun itself is moving along a rural stretch of a spiral arm amidst billions of stars in the Milky Way galaxy, and a universe brimming, frothing even, with trillions of galaxies, firmly upending any concept of humanity being at or even near the center of anything. Archaeological anthropology has also gained an especially irreverent reputation, as there is scarcely an origin story of any culture on the planet that has not been amended or completely refuted by its findings. Scientific irreverence also applies to the field itself. When new evidence emerges to question long-accepted interpretations, including those once presented as prevailing frameworks, science updates its knowledge, overturns those well-reasoned, well-found assumptions. Real knowledge is never gained by being right about anything. It's earned through methodical seeking of truth, wherever it may lead. And seeking that truth is likely what led you here to another episode of This Week in Science, coming up next.
I've got the kind of mind that can't get enough. I want to learn everything. I want to fill it all up with new discoveries that happen every day of the week. There's only one place to go to find the knowledge I seek. I want to know what's happening. What's happening? What's happening this week in science? What's happening? What's happening? What's happening this week in science?
Good science to you, Kiki.
And a good science to you too, Justin, and everyone out there. Welcome to another episode of This Week in Science. We're back again to talk about, all the science that we want to on this show that we're doing with you right now. Thank you for joining us. The show is full of magical, wondrous, bounteous curiosity and maybe some misinformation. Oh my gosh.
Oh, that's my favorite.
Yeah, we're going to be having an interview tonight discussing misinformation with Dr. Matthew Facciani in just a minute. And of course, on this week's show, unfortunately, we're missing Blair tonight, but I brought some great stories. I am paying homage to the Animal Corner with the things that moths pay attention to when deciding where to lay their eggs. They might not like, loud noises. We'll find that out. Additionally, I have the brains of friends, the things we
Well,
remember.
we should give those back.
No,
Like-
no, they're mine now.
Now I'm very suspicious about why Blair is missing.
I have a jar full of Blair brain. No, I do not. But tonight on the show, I have brains of friends. The things we remember. A potential rewind button for brain damage and some replication. What do you have, Justin?
That would be very nice. I've got not so ancient Australians, after all, maybe. Oh, I've got a secret of the Stonehenge bluestones revealed. And why taking blood pressure medicine at night might be better at controlling it during the day.
Interesting. We always know circadian rhythms are in involved places, but
it's very involved in this one.
I want to know more. I want to know all the things I can do in the daytime and the nighttime and when they're going to work perfectly so I can have the exact right schedule, Justin. I need to know. All right, everybody. As we jump into the show right now, I want to remind you that subscribing to the TWIS podcast on your favorite platform or helping a friend do so if they have not already is just going to be one of the best things you can do this week. Additionally, you can find us on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitch. Look for TWIS Science, This Week in Science, or TWIS, TWIS. You can also head to our website, twis.org, where you can get information, show notes about every episode, the show, the hosts, find ways to subscribe as well. And, just remember, we try to be here as often as possible, usually Wednesdays around 8 p.m. Pacific time if you want to catch us live on the interwebs. Dun, dun, dun. And now, without further ado, we ready? Are we ready to jump into the science?
No more ados.
Nope. Ado. It's time to introduce our guest this evening. Dr. Matthew Facciani is a postdoctoral researcher at the University of Notre Dame. I want to do Notre Dame in French. Notre Dame in the Computer Science and Engineering Department. He is an interdisciplinary social scientist with a background in neuroscience and psychology and a PhD in sociology. His research focuses on media literacy, misinformation, social networks, political polarization, identities, and, this is the good one, artificial intelligence. He's also a science communicator, has written for various media outlets, spoken at conferences, and hosts a podcast, Misguided, the podcast, where he explores how social and psychological forces shape the way we process and consume information. His new book, Misguided, Where Misinformation Starts, How It Spreads, and What to Do About It, was recently published by Columbia University Press. Dr. Matthew, welcome to the show.
Hello, it's great to be here. Thank you for having me.
I'm so glad that you're joining us.
Based on that part, you must be busy.
Right now, more than normal.
Well, what do you mean? Was there something going on related to misinformation?
Maybe. It's a term.
I'm beginning to wonder if we have an untapped resource of geniusness in the world, because to be able to hold all these diametrically opposed concepts in mind at the same time and still believe a thing seems like it would take a lot of work. Like a lot of mental work is going into just believing in some of the misinformation. And I mean, I don't just mean the political stuff going on. I see a lot of the fake archaeology stuff, the seemingly easily debunked things where that you can look things up in this age, and yet it still gets like tremendous amounts of attention.
I think as we jump into what this is all about, right? In the science realm, we've come across ideas like flat Earth, which you talk about a little bit in your book, and there are documentaries and other things related to the communities of people that that ascribe to this belief. But before we jump into all these like different directions and all this stuff, what is misinformation and how did you get interested in it?
Yeah, so misinformation broadly refers to false or misleading information. So it's a super big umbrella term. And it's actually an academic term in the psychology literature that was popularized in the 1980s with research about false memories. So there's been people studying misinformation for decades now. And a lot of the research that I started reading about in the early 2010s was about psychological bias and how that influences information processing. So my background's a little weird because I changed majors in graduate school, which is not very typical. But I was a neuroscience PhD student, and then I switched into sociology and finished my PhD in that field. And I was at the same university, so some of my credits and stuff actually transferred. But it was an interesting journey, but a really cool journey because I was able to have that background of cognitive neuroscience and psychology and thinking about how the brain processes information, but then also studying how all these social elements influence our beliefs and attitudes. And that's really the perspective I take when I study misinformation. I am trying to understand how these social forces influence how we process information and then what we can do about it to become hopefully more objective and more accurate in how we respond to the information we're exposed to.
What I love about the way your journey has led you to where you are is that, you have this kind of the understanding of like the underpinnings of the brain, right? How it
Mhm.
works. And now you're looking more into, okay, let's look outside. What are the social pressures and how does that influence what happens inside? So the feedback loop of self, society, um, or culture and how that all works together. Um, but is there like the misinformation, it's misguided, right? Is
Mhm.
different from disinformation. And but like, do we need to worry about or think about what is misinformation or disinformation on a daily basis? Is that even something people need to understand?
I think so, because disinformation refers to intention. So, intentionally trying to mislead someone and spread falsehoods. So, when we think about where the misinformation, big umbrella term, where this all comes from, we can think about the people who spread it and have
Mhm.
incentives to spread falsehoods. So, when we think about like big picture, macro level, our information environments, it's important to also think about political incentives, for example. That's a big one, or economic incentives. And I think that can help us understand the supply side of misinformation and disinformation. And I do talk about that in the book, but I mostly focus on the demand side of it. Like,
Mhm.
why are we susceptible to it? Why do people seek this out? And how all those processes work on both an individual level, but then also looking at community levels and then institutional levels as well.
So in the sense of the misinformation, it's like it's this is like here on the show, maybe I misstate something.
Mhm.
Maybe I don't accurately report a news story related to science. The intent was to be accurate, but I made a mistake.
Right.
Is that spreading misinformation? And then if people take what I say and spread it further, is that then the spread of misinformation versus I want to make money off of nutritional supplements. And so I tell a story about the science of
Mhm.
how they work. I make it up.
Right. That's a great example. So yeah, if you misunderstand something and you tell a friend about something, yeah, maybe supplements, like maybe you read something and you think that, hey, this supplement I think could help someone, so I share this information with them that's not evidence based, it's not backed in reality. That's just misleading, false information that anyone can fall for. The disinformation side of it is, okay, I want to make money, and I know if I tell people this pill will make them feel better, they'll buy my pill, so I'm going to intentionally mislead them. The tricky thing is with the people who do this, I think sometimes they kind of deceive themselves and they kind of want to believe it's true. So that kind
Yeah.
of boosts the
There's like a
cognitive dissonance. So it gets
is there a little wavy gray area there somewhere? Like it's disinformation. So for instance, flat Earth was Russian propaganda. It was like a flag. It was a test case to see how easy it would be to get people to believe something on social media. So like in the 2000s, this thing kind of has a little group of people who talk about it sometimes. So we are going to serve disinformation. We're going to create these accounts and talk about the reality of the flat Earth that we live on. And that was propaganda. That was lies. That was disinformation. And also, why don't we call disinformation lies and propaganda? It seems better. It seems more straight ahead.
And some people do use those terms. So it gets tricky once you dive into which terms, people prefer to use.
You can't call it it used to be called propaganda, but they changed it.
Now it's called news.
No, now it's called public relations.
Oh, right.
The U.S. government had a department of propaganda. And the same, Bernays, I can't remember his first name, but he was Freud's nephew through marriage.
Oh yeah, he started the whole.
But he was working for the Department of Propaganda and started to realize, like, after the war, it had a bad connotation, so turned it into public relations. And so all of these public relations firms that we have today, you can imagine, is just rebranded propaganda. That's what their title is.
So the propaganda of flat Earth was spread on social media, and then people came together. They started listening to it. They were susceptible to the disinformation and then started sharing it and turning it into a whole thing that they believed. And so they weren't knowingly spreading disinformation. In that case, are the people who are part of the flat Earth community, who share this information, who try to talk with other people about it, who truly believe that we live on a flat. Are they then misguided and spreading misinformation?
Yeah, I mean, from their perspective, they think they're sharing accurate information. So I think it's important to unpack like why we have these motivations. And when I talk about in the book, I cite this great documentary, Behind the Curve, that does interview flat earthers and describe their perspective and, importantly, their communities. And I use them as an example because I think it helps us understand something of why we would believe something that most people would consider to be obviously false, that the Earth is flat. It's like, okay, like how could anyone believe this? And then I describe in the book, well, it's like, okay, so if the Earth is round or flat or hexagon shaped, that really doesn't impact your day-to-day life all that much. But if all your friends and your social support system is involved in believing that the Earth is flat, then rejecting that belief actually will have a big impact on your day-to-day life. So it's important to think about how these communities and the beliefs and meanings associated with those identities and communities have a strong impact on our motivation to process information in a certain way.
So thinking about the psychology of it from the social perspective of belonging, group identity, there's all that cultural, social influence, but are there also like brain types, or like are there genotypes? Are there certain personalities that are more likely to believe misinformation?
Yeah, so there's also cognitive research in this area that dives into different cognitive styles, where some people tend to engage in more intuitive, quick thinking that helps them derive an answer through their intuitive processing. And that is contrasted against more an analytical, reflective, slow, deliberative type of thinking style. And these two thinking styles are measured from a variety of different survey measures and experiments. This is like brain teasers that oftentimes can try to study this, like how if you go with the initial answer that makes sense to you versus the one that if you think through it a little bit more, you'll get to the answer. So we do find that when people have these more analytical, reflective thinking styles, they tend to be less susceptible to misinformation and less likely to share misinformation. So there is an important cognitive component as well. The good news is this can be pretty malleable, and you can prime people to think more reflectively by just having them, ask them to reflect on how they know something is true. That can get them in this mindset a bit more. So it's not something that's completely static. So that's the good news, that we all have this tendency to be more reflective under certain conditions.
I'd love to know. I mean, all of us have various people in our lives who reflect to a greater or lesser degree. But especially in the world of science communication and trying to correct misinformation in people's minds. Is there, have you come across, like, I guess, really best practices or ways to really talk with people? I mean, you talk with people, right? You get to know them. Don't make them feel like, you think that, what? Don't attack them. Don't be mean. But are there other ways that as a communicator you can, especially if it's not one-to-one conversation, for instance, in a podcast, how can you talk to people?
Yeah, so that's an important distinction. So one-to-one, that is something that I do discuss in the book and I've written about before. There are strategies that you can do to reduce defensive biases. So how I approach it is I don't ever go into these discussions with a goal of changing minds. The goal is to turn down polarization and the heat of the conversation, so you can at least improve your odds of your perspective being heard by the other person. Like that should be the goal, is having that information actually be absorbed. Because a lot of times if people have these really strong defensive biases, because, for example, the information you're presenting conflicts with a really strong identity that they have, they don't even listen to it. It's just immediately is rejected. So you can at least increase the odds in your favor that they'll at least listen to it, and then maybe they'll reflect on it and change their mind down the road if they decide on it. And some techniques for that involve connecting via shared identity first. So, we know these identities are important for our beliefs, but if you can bond with someone over something completely different from what you're talking about. So if it's, about a health topic, for example, like vaccines, you don't even have to talk about, anything related to health first. You can talk about your common interests with, maybe you both care about your children and what's best for them, and come at it from that particular frame of having a co-identity of parents. And then once you start talking about the topic, you can start trying to understand where they're coming from and reframing the conversation in a way that is consistent with the stuff they care about. So if they're skeptical of vaccines, for example, why are they skeptical of them? Is it the financial motivations of big pharma? If it is, then you can have a conversation about that and maybe go into how vaccines actually don't make all that much money for these pharmaceutical companies. So once you reframe it, you can also think about the actual language that you use too. So instead of just having this kind of binary debate of, are vaccines good or bad, for example, like that's not going to be very productive in your conversation. And instead, you can really try to focus on the word how. Like, how do you know this is true? How confident are you? Can you walk me by this step-by-step mechanism of why you think that the vaccine manufacture process has these flaws, and really try to point out those steps? And that can be much more productive. But ultimately, all of these steps need to be repeated, and it's very challenging to do one-on-one
over and over again.
Over and over. But yeah, there are some techniques that help.
Especially if, though, I mean, I can see, and probably have many times gotten agreement in a conversation about something, walking it through in a one-on-one. But if at the end of the day they're going back to the community of think that rejects that, what you're saying is it doesn't really help that they've even rationed or thought through it and come to any other conclusion. They still need to belong to group, and group thinks this, and so they will, I assume, just go back to that for belonging's sake.
Yeah,
or bias
yeah.
sake, right?
Sure. I mean, a single conversation, especially like, an online conversation with someone is not going to be super productive and make a big dent in how they think about the thing that you're talking about when you're contrasting it against their community and their information ecosystem that they're in. So
Huh.
that really speaks to the importance of having people diversify the identities within themselves. So not all of their self-esteem is derived from this narrow set of identities. So again, to take this extreme example, let's say you have, your political identity and you have a very strong like contrarian identity, and those are the only two identities you have that you care about. So you're automatically going to reject what the medical institution says to you because you want to be contrarian, and then your political identity is also against medical institutions. So that's 100% of your self-esteem is being dependent on rejecting this information. So yeah, then in that case, it's super hard for that person to update any of their beliefs when they are challenged by them. So really, it's more about how do we create a society where we have these more diversified social groups and identities, so we're not so dependent on a narrow set of meanings with a narrow set of identities attached to them.
And just to clarify the idea of identities, right? That's like, I'm a mom. I'm a podcaster. No, I don't want to be a podcaster. I am a science communicator. That's broader. Are the identities, are they labels? Are they the contextual or the conceptual aspects of, how we see ourselves belonging in the world?
Yeah, great question. Yeah, so to define identities in the sociological literature, we refer to identities as a set of meanings. And these
Mm.
set of meanings that are attached to social groups we belong to, roles that we have, or unique characteristics that define us as people. So, yeah, a mom could be. It could be several things. It'd be roles that you do as a mom, but also maybe you belong to like a mom's group. So maybe that's a social
Mhm.
group. And then as a science communicator, that could be a role that you're adhering to. Maybe you think of yourself as like a curious, skeptical person, and that's a unique characteristic how you view yourself. So
Mhm.
yeah, when you evaluate information, you're viewing it through these lenses of how do the identities that I have, are they being am I acting in a way that is supporting the meanings attached to them or not? And there's this feedback loop of, okay, am I being a good mom? If I am, then yes, that makes me feel good. And I will keep being a good mom because I want to get this self-esteem boost. Or it's same thing with science communication or any of these identities, with this constant feedback loop of wanting to adhere to those meanings. The big challenge is when those meanings are overlapping so much with other identities and they're being reinforced by other people around us. And
Mhm.
it's really that amplification process. That's where we can get into trouble because we are so dependent on these meanings for our self-esteem, and they have such power over us that we want to try to diversify where we're deriving our self-esteem from, so it's not just so much on just one or two meanings, for example.
I mean, ideally, you don't derive it from anything external, right? You should ideally, the, ultimate enlightened human, your self-esteem is, it is just that you exist, right? But we it is there any work that has suggested that, say the, there's a loneliness issue in the United States. There is an issue with American families, especially, but Western families, um, not not being as caring to the older, the parents, grandparents. Parents, grandparents end up living alone, maybe watching Fox News all the time. Um, is there work that suggests that it is that this winnowing of social contact and the closing of doors to identity and meaning with isolation that can lead to that greater potential for misinformation to take root?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's all connected, and we can look at the macro level of how our society is structured and how we don't have a lot of opportunities to go to what's called third spaces. So we have our home and our work, but a lot of times we don't have these third spaces where we can meet lots of different people and form different friendships with a diverse group of people and form different types of identities.
Your bowling club.
Yeah. Bowling alone. Yeah. Putnam's work on that. Like it's still very relevant today when we think about our society and, loneliness as a problem of itself, which is a health problem just by itself, but also in terms of misinformation. And there is research showing that when people feel lonely and isolated and detached from society, they are more vulnerable to misinformation when they feel lower status. So it's the lower status component of them feeling unhappy, but also because they have a smaller set of identities and they don't have all these different friend groups that they can rely on, then they might be overly attached to, maybe some political identity that they formed online through different people that they, even just having parasocial relationships with like TikTok or YouTubers that they follow.
Right. I am all of my parasocial friends right now. I'm here for you. Yeah,
So
I mean,
this sounds like what how politics works now. Like the idea that the rural farmers in Iowa would vote because they were against transgender fencing or something seems like that is something that got added in to the end of a different list of things that they maybe did care about or did groupthink about. And it seems like it becomes this growing sort of trend of people you're like, why are they talking about these issues in this part of the country? Why are they talking about immigration in parts of the country that don't have a border and have very few people, let alone immigrants in them? It seems like they get combined into their group with all of these different things that they then start to identify with issues that haven't actually affected them. And it's very curious because then from what you're telling me, this is how
isn't it the wedge issue
is grown. Is it's all wedge issues, but you're adding them alongside a group issue that they might care about or something that is in their culture already. But by adding a couple of other things and making it this larger tent of identity, then they start to believe things that they might not have ever even considered in their frame before. So that biasing of thought. There's this weird conversation I've had, I think 50 times now, where somebody has told me that California's gun laws have resulted in in more gun deaths than Texas with its low. And then I always have to go pull up the data. Here it is. You look
actually them.
Look it up per capita, and it's much, much, much lower in California than it is in Texas. That's the fact part. But for some reason, everyone who's into guns or pro guns has that locked. And I don't know if the battle then with good information versus misinformation. They may have heard that once and locked it in. Versus no matter how many times they hear the other, it may not change it back again. And I don't know how much of that is just choosing the information that fits your view or what you want the world to be, or if it is part of a groupthink. Like, okay, I see there's the actual data, but all of my friends think this, and I'm going to continue.
Yeah, it's a few different things. So, the signaling to your group identity is definitely a big part of it. The media information that you consume is also a big part of it. And then also the sources of information that you trust is a big part of it. So if you pull up some scientific study and someone doesn't trust science or scientists or that particular institution, then it doesn't matter what facts or logic you use on them. They say, well, that group is against my group and I'm not going to listen to what you have to say. So that really dives into a broader question of trust and what that looks like as far as rebuilding trust in these scientific institutions.
And in the chapter in your book on identities, you bring up identity protective cognition. Is this kind of the same as willful ignorance, which I think is kind of what Justin was like? There's this concept of just, choosing, like it willfully ignoring information that has been given to you.
Yeah, I mean, you want to protect yourself. It's
Mhm.
like from a psychological perspective, it's rational to want to protect yourself and avoid discomfort and pain. So, we can understand this from a psychology lens that, yeah, like you don't want to feel things that make you feel bad. You don't want to, get upset and get depressed. And a lot of times we avoid pain
Mhm.
when we can. So this is just like another component of that is, okay, this, for me to really grapple with this means I really have to challenge a lot of these beliefs. And then those beliefs are attached to identities, and those identities are attached to communities that I care about.
Mhm.
So it can be really painful to grapple with something that's going to completely shatter your sense of self. So again, this goes back to that point I
Mhm.
keep talking about the diversity and the how broad your identity structures are, so you can handle some challenging information sometimes, and it doesn't feel like a complete personal attack on who you are.
Yeah. Yeah. I have to know, do you think, misinformation, it's not like it's a new thing, right?
Mhm.
Misinformation is just it's just sharing stuff. It's stuff that's not quite right, right?
Mhm.
So, but is it social media? Like, is it social media's fault that that we're in the predicament we're in, or is this just, is this Machiavellian political maneuverings that people have in PR have thrust upon our society?
Yeah, I mean, there's always been misinformation. There's always been bad actors exploiting these processes and spreading disinformation. Social media does amplify it and accelerate these processes. And again, when you think about those identity structures, you can think about how easy it is to find people who agree exactly with you and whatever
Mhm.
topic it is, and then have this narrow group of people that you follow, and then you reinforce each other through this like mutual verification, these mutual spirals of misinformation. And that's really the challenge. Is it's like one thing, okay, we have political identities, we've always had political identities, but then it's another thing when you can go on and you can find a bunch of people that fills up your entire social media page that think just like you do on a particular topic, and you're all supporting each other and saying, yeah, we're the smart ones, we're good, it's us versus them. And you can see just how powerful that is. Whereas before social media, it was hard to find 10 people who agreed with you exactly on a particular topic. So it's not so much that social media is like adding in something new, it's just like amplifying and accelerating these existing processes.
And there's
Yeah.
something interesting about that I'm almost questioning now, which is do they actually believe it? In that there seems to be this really fine line between here's a group of people who actually believe this to yeah, but we have our tribe and we don't want to be wrong, so we're going to defend it whether it's
Mhm.
true or not. Like almost like we're in on the fact that we're going to sell this information together now. We're like sort of like the misinformation that you might have bought into. And after you're part of the community, you're like, well, okay, now I'm part of disinformation, but that's going to win, right? Like there's this weird like imbalance in it, you can see it flowing sort of through social media postings and that sort of thing, but it becomes really prevalent at the highest levels of political office nowadays,
Right.
where politicians are switching their views completely from something they've said just a couple years ago to fit a narrative.
Yeah.
And that the followers fit that narrative. I don't think that they've changed their beliefs. I think they're engaging in disinformation for the tribal win almost. I mean, it's really, it's like beyond gaslighting when everyone your gaslighting is in on it. Right? Is there
Yeah.
is there a thing to call that when somebody switches from being misinformed to engaging in
Actively.
disinformation themselves?
Yeah, that's a good question. So there is research looking at the impact of what's called political elite cues on the broader public. And we do see this trend of, whenever a political leader that you really care about changes or adds something new, it does have an impact. And a lot of their followers will listen to them if they're well liked in their group. And for them, it could be, something that might lose some people who maybe have, other identities that really conflicts with. But if you really fuse your identity with the group and the leader, then you probably will update your beliefs in a way that makes sense to you. And you probably do actually believe it. So I think there's a distinction between the political leaders and the people who follow them. I think that's an important distinction, because there's different incentives. The political leaders, they want money, they want power, and the people who follow them are belonging to a group, or maybe they do care about these particular issues, and they also want to act in accordance to the different identities that they have. So I do think it's a little bit of both for your question.
There are so many wonderful topics in your book that you're covering. In chapter 5, I think it is, when you're talking about social media and identity, and also now you could on LinkedIn verify yourself by paying for a clear membership. There are all these very interesting systems being put in place. You mentioned the importance of trying to rebuild trust in institutions. I feel like we are still in this since COVID-19, especially, but since 2016. It's this decade, over a decade long process of eroding trust in our public institutions, where we are now just fully in the soup of it, right?
Yeah. Let's
just tear them apart. Let's just get rid of them. We don't need them anymore. We're gonna just have corporations take care of everything. I'm just curious about your ideas on how to start rebuilding trust as these massive external forces are at play, just ready to tear apart any efforts you may undertake.
Yeah, I mean that's a big question, and
answer it now.
All right, I'll try to solve all the problems in 60 seconds to see if I can do it. So there are definitely big external forces at play that make things definitely very challenging. I don't think it's worth ignoring that component. But what we can control within these institutions and as scientists, there are certain things that we can do. So the communication aspect is a big one. Unfortunately, for a long time, there wasn't a big incentive for scientists and academics to communicate with the broader public. So your tenure package wasn't going to have anything about, how many podcasts you did or anything like that.
Yeah. No, how many Scientific American articles you wrote, that wasn't part of it. It's just your contribution to the academic institution, right? The internal knowledge as opposed to external.
Right, exactly. And I think changing those incentive structures is really important. And I think slowly, now that these institutions are being so attacked and are having to play a lot of defense, they're starting to care more about that stuff, which is frustrating because, I was concerned about this, a long time ago, as were many other people saw it's frustrating to see hey, this bad thing's going to happen if we don't change the way this is operating. And then the bad things happen. It's that's frustrating. But so now that we're here, I was what do we do about it? One is, improving communication, improving incentive structures. So academics and scientists will actually have time to communicate their research with people, so people understand the importance of these institutions and these universities. They actually
I think there should also be sustainable funding models for professional science communicators who are not academics.
Yep, I totally agree.
They're not last minute line items in your broader impact section of your NSF grant.
Yeah, and that speaks to the bigger, broader issue with all of this is that there isn't a lot of funding in science communication and science outreach, and there's a ton of funding to tell lies. And that's just an unfortunate asymmetry of our world, that science is not going to lie to you. It's not going to give you satisfying falsehoods that make you feel better. It's just going to give you the best available evidence that we have. And sometimes, that doesn't give you a very satisfying answer. And then you can contrast that with someone who's lying to you for profit, who says, buy my supplement and all your problems will be solved. Well, that's a pretty attractive option. Oh, I just buy this pill and everything's better, versus a scientist who says, well, your particular medical condition, we don't really understand how to cure it right now, and we're still working through all the science. And then, it's a very difficult thing. So it will require people investing in this. So it's basically trying to invest in this. So we're constantly maintaining scientists who can engage in the public, prevent future attacks, and also just, better work with their communities too. Like another big part of this is not just the communication aspect, but what I hope happens is universities and hospital systems will actually work with their local communities more and have this two-way dialogue of understanding what people care about, what are their concerns, and how can we best work together to address them. So if people are questioning vaccines, they can have a town hall with their local physicians who will answer these questions, or their local scientists. So it reduces that psychological distance between different communities and people within these institutions. And within institutions, that's broadly speaking. It can be, working within a university or someone who has a background in science. So I think, we're seeing this happen now with a lot of science communicators, trying to be more active, but it really needs a lot more organization and collaboration and funding for, I think, to have a bigger impact.
I celebrate these ideas, and I can only hope that we can develop them further. Now, at one of the topics you do study, you're in a department of computer science, but doing social science. The last little item in there is that you study artificial intelligence. What role is artificial intelligence? Do you talk about it at all in the book for people who might want to be interested? Is there going to be another book coming out? Is this something you talk about on your podcast? But artificial intelligence and its role in the future of misinformation. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. This is something I do think about, and I do talk about it at the end of the book. And it was a challenging thing to write about because, it's changing so fast. So I tried to be mindful of, okay, whatever I write here, how do I future proof it as best I can for the next few years? And I try to couch it basically in, okay, technology is going to evolve. We know these chatbots and AI tools are going to be more and more popular. But we also know that for me, it just highlights the importance of understanding human bias and social biases, because humans are developing these tools. Our biases are built into these tools, and we really need to understand that process so we're not replicating and expanding these biases at scale with AI. So that's one of the big arguments I make, and I describe that in the book. But more broadly, what I worry about with artificial intelligence is just the sheer scale and volume of misinformation and disinformation. It's just so easy to promote falsehoods online in a way that is really well written, in a way that wasn't before, and
with these large language models and the hallucinations that they experience, I mean, they're learning from themselves. They're getting positive reinforcement from users who do not necessarily know the accurate facts. And so the misinformations that they may report get baked in to their knowledge matrix, right? So suddenly misinformation becomes part of the knowledge base for AI. And isn't that it shouldn't, but it does.
Is it? I mean, what is? I don't think that they're. I think somebody had
maybe Matthew knows better than either of us.
It seems like they're trying to keep that separate, because that was a problem in some of the early rollouts, right? That training it on people's text messages or what have you, or chat rooms, became a real problem as they became virulently racist or crude.
Right.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so the training data is critical. So I think that's a really important perspective to have, is like, okay, these large language models are being trained on various types of data, like huge amounts of text data. And it's like, how are they weighting this data? What data do they include and exclude? Like, you can see the differences, as we saw recently with Grok and X. Like, when you tweak the training data, you can have
to be tweaked only to like your prime leaders, like ideologies and tweets. Yeah.
So we see just how sensitive it is. So I think that's the interesting component of it. Like, beyond that particular example, it's just like you kind of veer into the black box a little bit of these algorithms and these training sets. And there's some research diving into this, looking at, okay, all it takes is like a little bit of misinformation, however you want to define that, and it can completely change what answers the chatbot will give. So what I think is really important is these companies really need to be super transparent and share their data with independent researchers. Now, that's a big ask, but that's what I hope what we can advocate for.
And there was this bright shining spot for a while when Twitter's API was completely open to researchers, and it seemed like we were there. It was this golden period of social science research of things happening online, of trends, of tracking networks of individuals who were working in certain realms. But this is how do we convince? I mean, this is the next step. It's not related to your misinformation book at all, but it's the next level. How do we convince the corporations to have these collaborations, to allow researchers to access the data, that it's going to be beneficial to them in the long run, when really they want to keep their little silo and sell all those informations to all of your personal information for $50 a month to or whoever.
Yeah, I mean, that's the big question, right? It's like, how do you put pressure on these companies? And part of that is awareness of the public, so we can, ideally we would have people realize the value of transparency and accountability of these companies, and then they would go to their local representatives who would put regulatory pressure on the companies for them to do the right thing, as opposed to just solely caring about shareholder value. That's a tough.
Hang on. Oh boy.
I know, maybe a little idealistic.
You said that so straight faced, I almost didn't get the joke. Oh gosh.
I know. Matthew, have you in the work that you're doing, like have you done any work where you've needed to get into a tech company or social media platforms data, and what kind of challenges have you found if you've done that?
So Twitter, like you mentioned, used to be really open, and unfortunately it's not. So that's definitely been a challenge. I do have my boss at Notre Dame has access to Meta's content library, which provides some data of Threads, Facebook, and Instagram. And so researchers can apply for this, and they can, it takes a while to go through the process, but you do get access to a lot of good data. But it's still not as detailed as I would like. And that's really the trick, is like getting access to the really detailed, granular stuff.
Yep.
So I have had some access to it. I've known people that have had access to these things. It's challenging because these companies are very cautious about who has access to their data, because they don't want anything to come out that makes them look bad. So it's tough, because again, for my ideal world is having transparency and accountability and collaboration with independent researchers. Like, that's how we actually would solve these problems. But again, the incentive structure of these companies is not always to be as open with a lot of different people.
Yeah.
No, and I think the problem is not obvious to everybody. But the same way that our medical data is kept anonymized and secret and only really supposed to be used, get access to for doing research purposes, that sort of thing. Your medical data is not being sold to leverage products at you or to influence your political views. That I'm aware of, at least.
Not yet.
And the same thing should, those same types of regulations should be in place for your social media data, because it's those, even more so, really, access points to influencing, manipulating people than we would ever worry about from our medical data. Your medical data is at worst case going to maybe be used for bias in a job search or something like this, right? Like, this is the sort of things people were afraid of having medical data sort of open for, and why it's so closed and why it's so tightly controlled. Oh my goodness, the amount of manipulations and biases that can be applied against you for whatever political or economic reasons through all the sharing you do on social media is tenfold the exposure that you would get from having your medical data, identifying you.
Yeah.
So it's
I'll
really weird to me that sort of thing isn't covered. And I think the EU is doing a better job of it.
They're trying. They're definitely, the EU is definitely trying. Yeah. But it's still all of this information management. You talk in the book, and this is something that I've been a supporter of for a while, is media literacy. That, if we start at the young age, and my son is going into high school now, but for years in school, in middle and elementary school, they've stepped into the basics of checking your sources and figuring out what is what's a reliable source. And we don't even have to get into the who you trust as a source and why you don't, or that's the identity issue. But I know we're keeping you up late, so
Okay.
in terms of your book and the work that you do, what do you wish that more people knew about misinformation?
Yeah, so I think we actually covered some of the big takeaways as far as understanding that, yes, media literacy, education, digital literacy, all very important, and understanding how to verify the credibility of a source and the information it's presenting, really, really helpful in reducing the spread of misinformation, broadly speaking. But all of that becomes much more limited if we don't understand how our social and psychological biases influence how we process information. And that's kind of like my main point, is like, okay, so yes, we have fact checking, we can learn about, lateral reading, media literacy, these different techniques, which are really great. However, we might be selective in when we apply them, for example. So yeah, we can verify the credibility of something, but only if we're skeptical of it. And then we don't maybe verify things that we believe because of our identity biases. So what I hope is not only to promote media and digital literacy, but also this like social identity literacy of understanding where we're deriving our self-esteem from through these social communities that we belong to, and how they might influence us in how we process information. And that's what I hope that people can start reflecting on, is reflecting on where these biases are most pronounced in their lives and under what conditions would they realize this. And to do this, I think it has to be a collaborative process. Like, you can think about it yourself, and there's some value in that. But ideally, it would take a diverse network of people where you're checking each other and challenging each other and pointing out where your logical inconsistencies are and all of that. Again, that's the ideal, but we can work towards that as we all try to become more resilient against misinformation.
Thank you very much for your time tonight, Matthew. It is just so wonderful to get to talk with you and to have had a chance to look through your book. And I really do think this is a crucial period of time for more people to become aware of this topic, the issues that are related to it, and also exactly how they rub up against it in life. Like you said, I don't know. there might be a Venn diagram here of the people who would read your book and the people who would be willing to go into that self-assessment space.
Mhm.
To
Yeah.
be able to take the time to go, how is my social circle impacting me? Yeah.
I hope so. And I hope to reach people, beyond that Venn diagram as well. I think that's really the trick, is expanding this so it's something that we all care about, because we're all influenced by our information ecosystem and how people respond to it. So again, hopefully this is something that we can talk about and create more social norms to reflect on these identity biases collectively.
I hope so. I'm not affected by anything. I only get information from my Google News feed. That's it. I'm not affected by anything. No.
And the chat room is saying they don't want to rewind to the beginning of the show. What is the title of the book?
I am bringing it up right now. I was just going to ask Matthew. Yes, where can our audience find you and your book?
Yeah, so my book is up there. Yeah, Misguided. All about misinformation, where it spreads and what we can do about it. So you can find it on wherever major, all your major book resellers, Amazon, Barnes and Noble, but also local bookstores. So you can actually request it at your local bookstore if you want to support them. So I definitely would advocate for that. And I have a podcast also called Misguided, along with my newsletter, where I interview people in this space who do this kind of work from various different angles. So it's really cool to kind of keep up with this ever evolving landscape. And then I also write about social science research that I find interesting, and I think other people find interesting, both from my own research and other people's research, on my newsletter. So yeah, if you're interested in following that, Misguided is the brand that I'm leaning into for my podcast, my newsletter, and my book. I'm also on social media. I'm probably most active on Threads, but I'm also on Blue Sky and Instagram, where I talk about this stuff as well.
And are you as your name, just your name on Blue Sky? Or...
Yep. Yeah, Matthew Facciani. So thankfully having a unique name helps me, so that I don't have a lot of people to sort out. It's usually the only Matthew Facciani in a lot of places.
Yeah, no matter where I go, there's at least 20,000 other Justin Jacksons.
I haven't found too many Kiki Sanfords or Kirsten Sanfords. I don't know. There's not too many of me. But yes, Justin, sorry you're in the out group here. But once again, Matthew, thank you so much for joining us for the evening. It has just been really wonderful getting to talk with you about your book, about your research. And I do hope that we can chat with you again at some point in time. And I hope you get a good night's sleep.
Great. Thank you so much. It was great talking with you all. Thank you again for having me.
Thank you. Absolutely. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Thanks. All right, everybody. We are going to take a quick break. Well, it's not really a break. It's like a little break. It's not a big break. It's just whatever. It's time for me to say thank you. Thank you for being a part of this family of science appreciators, of curious people, uniquely curious people. Our show is supported by our listeners. And so if you are subscribed, we appreciate that. If you help find us more subscribers in your friends, in your social circle, I love that if people want TWIS listener, TWIS fan as part of their identity, I'll cheer that on totally. I'm not going to fight you on that one. We'd like to bring more people into the TWIS family of curious minds. You can head over to twis.org, click on the Patreon link, and become one of our financial supporters. Click on the Patreon link, or there's also a link for PayPal support if you don't do the Patreon. These are the two things that we have that I've come up with over the years. But Patreon is a way you can support TWIS in an ongoing fashion. Choose your level of support. $10 and more a month. And I will try to read your name at the end of the show without tripping over the syllables. So please head over to twis.org, click on that Patreon link, and help support science communication, not misinformation. We thank you for your support. We really can't do it without you. All right, I was going to come on back to talk a little bit about some more science. We're going to do a little bit of more science talking, I think. We will, yes, we will be conversing about many more interesting topics. I think I'm going to jump right into, as we come on back with more This Week in Science, I'm going to jump right into a big win for the field of replication. So researchers trying to be part of the open science reproducibility world, trying to figure out, we know in social science and psychology, behavioral research, there were a lot of issues with reproducing studies so that they got similar or the same results as previous studies. Sometimes researchers in these areas trying to reproduce the studies would talk to the original researchers, try and do everything exactly the same, and they still would get different results. We don't exactly know why there is such a massive crisis, they call it a crisis, in reproducing behavioral studies. Maybe it's sample size, maybe it's methods, maybe it's some aspect of the environment, maybe it's regional, maybe it's circadian, who knows? But some areas of research, and in fact, most areas of research where there have been attempts to reproduce and verify the results of the fields, they've really found that there's a problem. More than half of 100 psychology studies fail reproducibility tests. Brazilian biomedical studies, they could replicate less than half of the tested experiments. In this article talking about the article in Nature this last week, there's a group at the Swiss Fédéral Technologie Institute of Lausanne, EPFL, Hansen and Lemaitre, they're geneticists. They decided to take a look at their field of research, fruit flies and fruit fly immunity. So they did a big meta review looking at 1,000 results from 400 papers published between 1959 and 2011. And that's when the 2011 Medicine Nobel Prize was a Drosophila winner. After 2011, they looked at published work supporting or refuting each claim that had come from those original 400 papers and 1,006 results. And they determined, using their own expertise in their field, 61% of the 1,006 claims were verifiable. Only 7% had been challenged and were not reproducible. This is the smallest amount of non-reproducible results that they have found to date. They discovered that, by and large, the field of Drosophila genetics and immunity, it's pretty good. It's fairly well reproducible. And when there were inconsistent results that were not reproducible, it was in a subset of 111 results that they knew, that Lemaitre says, these are claims I knew were a bit fragile. And in those particular claims, 38 were inconsistent with current knowledge. So there was a higher percentage in kind of this group of studies and claims that were already kind of on the edge anyway. So, and this is an expert in the field going, well, I know this is the way it is. It's not good science. I do not like this. I'm, now I'm going to challenge the claim and we will see it. No, of course it is not good. It's not good at all. Yeah. But anyway, Drosophila, model species for genetics, for human immunity, for all sorts of studies, gets reproduced like mad. So you can trust in Drosophila immunity.
So, and that is the result I would expect, right?
Yep.
You're talking about a very tight system in the genome of the fruit fly. You in your earlier comparison with human behavior, like,
well, that's where it started.
Gosh,
it was. I think it's so fascinating. Yeah.
diversity of researcher bias and, like how deep is your personality profile of your subjects to know that you've got, oh gosh, we have somehow in this study, everybody, a majority has this personality type versus this other group has this completely different majority. And you might expect completely different behavioral results if you knew that information. But if that information is not uncovered, then you don't know what you're working with.
Yeah, and I think I feel like it's fascinating, this reproducibility crisis that people talk about. It came from, they started in psychology. They were like, let's test the behavior literature, which was basically like this is going to be rough, everybody. You started with the hardest to reproduce pretty much possible. But we've seen also that Alzheimer's research, that there has been cancer research. Like I said, there's a biomedical review of Brazilian biomedical research. There are vast areas of research that have popped up as not being reproducible, and it's this one fly genetics. Woo woo! Go flies! Yeah. You're doing great.
Well, and then it's also what is the Alzheimer's gene? AOP something.
APOE. Yeah.
APOE.
There's like
okay.
There's APOE. So, there's the alpha and the alpha sheets, beta tangles, or beta sheets, alpha tangles, tau tangles. Yeah.
So APOE is a really interesting example to me, because here's a gene that we have that is correlated with risk for Alzheimer's. Like strongly correlated. We can look at this and we say, okay, yes, if you have this gene, you have X-fold chances of developing. The gene and the protein that it creates have no causal effect. It is not. This is sort of the frustration that has been going on in Alzheimer's for so long. Is that the thing that the biomarkers that they have had don't do anything if they're removed or if they're countered. They're not causally influenced. They're being caused, or they're part of the larger system of differentiation that is involved. That's a great marker for showing risk, but no matter how much research you do on that gene, the proteins that's creating aren't participating in the actual disease. And so it's like a really frustrating thing. And even some of the plaques, that's like, well, even when you counter the plaques, you still have the inflammation in the brain that's causing a lot of the neurodegenerative issues. So it's not just that either. It's a whole system. There was actually a study I didn't bring, which is a Justin thing to say.
It is. I didn't bring the study, but now.
Well, I should look it up, because we were talking that we're
Don't spread misinformation, man.
Right, but this is it's a Gates Foundation funded group. The Global Neurodegeneration Proteomics Consortium, GNPC. They went through looking at all these past studies and sifting through 250 million plasma measurements, and they found 5 proteins that consistently match the APOE4 carriers across Alzheimer's disease, Parkinson's disease, dementia, and what is this word? Amyotrophic lateral sclerosis.
ALS. Yes.
ALS.
Use the acronym. Yeah.
Thank you. So they've this is just breaking news from the past couple of weeks. This consortium has published that they found these new 5 biomarkers that are linked across neurodegenerative diseases and the APOE. So even though we've been doing all this research for decades around APOE, around the plaques, and trying to get that sorted out, and coming to ill fruition, just discovered is these 5 more targets or more things to inquire into that are consistent, not just in one, but across neurodegenerative diseases. And again, that doesn't mean we found a causal. It doesn't mean anything, really. It's just correlative still. But it's a big signal, right? That all of our looking was missing through lines. It was missing connecting threads.
Yeah.
And so these things can improve now that we have that more information to tackle it with. But that's part of the problem, and a lot of the consistency is, are you missing something? Like nutritional studies that didn't take into account the microbiome, or don't take into account the ill effects of a processed food, are going to, until you have identified these things that need to be considered alongside your main thrust of your study, you're going to get inconsistent results because you're missing part of the picture. And that's what science is always trying to do, is complete that picture so that we're not missing that through line.
Narrow the scope, understand the through line, make sure you know all the parameters. I mean, it really is, it's like, but the biology is messy, right? So it's like, okay, who has this particular genetic variant? Who has this? Why is this the way that, there's a story that was published back in March, but that got some new coverage this last week, related to imidazole propionate, which is a compound that is released by bacteria in your gut. And the bacteria in your gut, and this imidazole family has been under study for a while for its impacts metabolically on the body and our physiology. But this particular study, we've been looking at atherosclerosis, right? So the hardening of the arteries, right? The buildup of plaques on the inside of your arteries. For years, it's been like, oh, you want to, it's like, got to have the good cholesterol, not the bad cholesterol. But then some people die of heart attacks who only have good cholesterol. And why do they have plaques and atherosclerosis if they've got such high good cholesterol levels and low bad? I lived exactly right. I did what I was supposed to. What about this particular paper directly linked the imidazole propionate that is produced by the bacteria in your gut to the buildup of plaque through inflammation in the inside of your blood vessels. So the bacteria are in there, and life changes, stress, diet changes, whatever, it can change the bacterial makeup of your gut and lead to more bacteria who produce this particular type of compound that produce the imidazole. And when it does, it goes into the blood vessels, it gets in the blood vessels, and it causes inflammation in the endothelium of the blood vessels. That inflammation leads to plaques, leads to hardening, and leads to atherosclerosis, even if you have really great cholesterol levels. So it explains some of those, like, it is the through line that nobody had put together before. It is this thing that impacts, outcomes, and it has nothing to do with your cholesterol. Absolutely nothing at all. And it could, but there are different populations of people. Some people who it is cholesterol, some people who it is this kind of immune system, imidazole system, some people where it's a combination but it explains things that were never explained before. And no, Kevin Reardon, plaque on your teeth is not the same as plaque in your vessels, but they are both kind of like caused by bacteria. But they're not the same. Not the same thing.
No, but you can still find toothpaste claims that that brushing teeth can prevent heart disease.
Well,
based on
that's different,
confounding
though.
of information.
Yes, that is different.
It's not true. No, it's been debunked. That whole claim has been long debunked.
There are issues
But
with
you can still see that
bacterial.
misinformation or disinformation,
Mhm.
depending on intent, I suppose.
Have a
for
clean
existing
mouth,
in the world.
everybody. Basically, if you
Don't
want
worry
to
about it. Don't
clean
worry
your
about
clean
it.
your mouth, it'll make you feel nice.
Don't
You
need
can be
to.
part of the toothbrushing team. Team toothbrushers. Let's do it. Um, Speaking of medical stuff, there was a story this week that I thought was super duper 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 cool. It's not in people yet, but this is one of those fingers crossed. Please have it work in humans because this is awesome. Researchers at Osaka Metropolitan University in Osaka. Researchers have been studying a compound called a GAI-17, and this is an inhibitor for the aggregation of a compound called glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate dehydrogenase, GAPDH. So GAI-17 stops GAPD from building up and from aggregating. They gave it to mice that had acute strokes. They gave the mice strokes. Yeah. And they weren't cute. They weren't cute strokes. I mean, yeah, no, I know that joke. Yeah. It's a mouse, so it's got to be acute. Anyway, this compound that they have created worked successfully even when administered 6 hours after a stroke to reverse damage to the brain, to the neurons, to the blood vessels in the brain of the mice. Brain damage was reversed. It was a 6-hour rewind button.
Oh my goodness, that's the whole game. So is it like oxygenating, like repair mechanisms? Like what's taking place?
So all it does is it stops this. So it inhibits this glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate dehydrogenase, which in lots of working aspects of the brain, the physiology of the brain, the GAPD is pathological. When you have aggregation of GAPD, you have issues with your brain. It's lots of GAPDH, not good. They made a compound that stops GAPDH from building up, and it can actually lead to reversals in damage to the brain. So
what is the job of this GAPD thing
yeah,
normally?
so there was less.
Is it, I'm assuming it's some sort of not a repair mechanism, but a removal of what is deemed unrepairable material. That would be my guess. That it's like a trash pickup. Like, well, we have a bunch of cells that aren't getting oxygenated, and they've sent a signal that they may be dying. So instead of having them persist, let's go get rid of it and shut them all down. It sounds like an external apoptosis mechanism kind of a thing. That would be my guess.
It leads to GAPD leads to mitochondrial dysfunction. So when you have lots of it building up, your mitochondria don't work as well. And we know that when the mitochondria don't work as well, suddenly you have metabolic issues. You have, maybe you have neuronal issues like Alzheimer's, right? You have diseases of neuron dysfunction where the cells don't function the way that they should. The glial cells don't work as well anymore. And so in the case of stroke, which is ischemia or blood flow blockage to the brain, that decreases oxygen. And usually that decrease in oxygen is, you think, oh, that's what caused the damage. But it's really the decrease in oxygen supply that leads to other signaling cascades within the cell, which one of them is the buildup of GAPDH, which then causes mitochondria not to work very well. And so then you have areas of the brain that are damaged, where neurons die, and you can have limb paralysis where neurons don't communicate with each other anymore. And so this new GAI-17 is protecting mitochondria by keeping the GAPTA away. But the insight to this is that although they have only looked at it in ischemic mice, it was so good at saving function in the brain that researchers are interested in other instances like Alzheimer's disease. So they're going to start looking at it in models of Alzheimer's disease in mice to see if ongoing doses or single delivered doses might be sufficient to reverse damage to the brain due to the buildup of those plaques and tangles within the brain.
And this is, again, highly speculative Justin talk.
This is still in mice. We don't, but it worked really, really well.
Highly speculativeness. But mitochondria is like a chief signaling system. And
It's
so
the
like
powerhouse of the cell.
I can see
Yeah.
One of the things that mitochondria do is when they're in trouble, they signal, and sometimes neighboring mitochondria will come over and help out, right? But they will self-identify as I'm in trouble. Somebody needs to fix something here. So if they're under a bunch of them are under stress, it may be sending out a massive signal that you almost would need to get rid of a gangrene limb, if you can, like a bunch of these cells are in trouble. And we need a critical sort of repair, not repair, but just get rid of us, instant apoptosis. We're not going senescent. Just get us out of here. And that might be the cascade. It might be something that because in the stroke, instead of one cell or two cells doing this, a whole bunch are doing it at once, and it's an overreaction of sort of that defense mechanism.
Well,
Otherwise, I don't know why they would be getting recruited so quickly.
Right. So cell death, programmed cell death is a normal process within all tissues of the body, including the brain. And like you were saying,
I want to know if GAP-DH is involved in that, because that would,
so
that would
I've
explain why this is working.
highlighted a paragraph at the start of this paper in iScience, so it's open access if you're interested. GAPTA is a glycolytic enzyme that is responsible for the 6th step of glycolysis. I knew I remembered it from some kind of a feedback loop. Anyway, in addition to this glycolytic function in metabolism, it is recognized as a multifunctional protein exhibiting various functions: DNA repair, tRNA export, transcription, membrane trafficking, heme metabolism, regulation of kinases, and apoptosis and necrosis.
There it is.
So yeah, apoptosis is going to be GAPTA-mediated cell death. And in this, there's nuclear translocation and aggregation. So in oxidative, nitrositive stress, GAPTA binds to something called SIA and undergoes nuclear translocation, inducing p53-dependent transcription of apoptotic genes, resulting in apoptotic cell death. I love saying apoptotic. It's not a pathological thing in your body. It's a thing that's doing really important work. But sometimes it becomes pathological.
Signaling.
Mm-hmm.
Because of the mass.
So you have an area of the brain that doesn't get oxygen, because of lack of blood flow in this stroke. Suddenly it's like, oxidative stress, blah, blah, blah. And it gets released more and more and more. And when it does that, it can create amyloid-like fibrils and cause cell death in vitro, in living organism. Or in vitro, in vivo, in vitro, in a dish. But the amyloid-like fibrils are another part of that interesting process.
Well, it's like if somebody has surgery and something gets left behind, it'll get covered up. The body will try to sequester it with this fibril tissue to
Yeah.
keep it away from everything else. Like,
Yeah, I love this.
It's very much like the zombie apocalypse is broken out in part of the brain, and the solution is we'll put a big dome over that part of town, and so none of the zombies can get out. That's
one of the other statements here that I think is interesting from previous research. GAPTA overexpressing mice treated with methamphetamine, which causes robust oxidative nitrosative stress in the brain, also display abundant GAPTA aggregates and neuronal cell death in vivo. That's in living organisms. So anyway, what they've done is this is just part of a signaling cascade that leads to cell death. But what they have done is they've created a molecule that can block it.
right. So, but the long story that I was trying to get to though then is
that it can rewind damage 6 hours later.
Rewind damage. That's brilliant. However, this is not something you would ever want to take preventatively because you would be preventing necessary cell death.
Yes.
Right?
But in a state of
this is not a process that we want to genetically fix to make us immune from a thing.
This is normal. It's good. It's normal.
And now the question is, the second follow-up question is, how long then does it last beyond that? Like, what's the half-life? Like, are we gonna have rogue cell building taking place for months and months? I mean, granted, you want to rewind the stroke damage immediately, and that's the priority anyway. But there could be a recovery downside to it as well.
Yeah, I have no idea, but I mean, ideally, if you are directly delivering it to where it is needed, you're not impacting, the function of this compound in other places in the body. It's only hopefully helping what's in the brain. And the idea, like right now we talk about with strokes, especially, it's like you have a window of like minutes to identify a stroke and make a phone call and get an ambulance, and time is everything for the damage that is done. And it's like after a stroke, the extent of the stroke, the damage increases with time. And that 6 hours later, they were able to rewind.
That's wild. That's
nope.
Wild. That's so huge.
Mice are fine. I really, really want to be a mouse. Can I be a mouse?
Be a research mouse.
Everything's solved. I know. Tell me a story, Justin. Yeah.
Oh gosh. Okay. I don't even know what I brought.
I know. We're just talking about things now, bringing it through.
Yeah. Now we're just
going
riffing
through the list.
We're just riffing. Oh,
it's riffing on the stories that we brought. I mean, kind of. Yeah. Give me one.
I gotta go pull up the story because I don't have it open. But this is really fascinating. This is actually something I think we kind of talked about a while ago, but it's one of those now that but they needed to do the study, and now they've done the study sort of thing. This is genetic evidence casting doubt on early colonization timelines in Australia. Australia has this peculiar thing of the folks that are there. They have been dating 50,000 years now back as far as 65,000 years based on some site data.
And somebody is saying maybe not. This new study is saying maybe not? Or
so a lot of research, actually, when you look at it, it's pretty much genomic research on humans is saying nah.
Why? What happened?
So there's cave art on an Indonesian island that dates to approximately 51,000 years ago. There's a site in northern Australia where it was saying 65,000-year-old stone tools and other human activity, and people said, oh, but what about your dating techniques? So then more dating techniques were brought to bear, and they confirmed 65,000 years ago there were these stone tools and some evidence of maybe cooking and some other human activity at this site. The problem is, and this is coming from actually 2 studies recently published in Nature and Science, that both found that Neanderthal interbreeding with anatomically modern humans out of Africa occurred only once.
Whoa, one
in
time?
Europe, only once in Europe between approximately 43.5 and 51.5 thousand years ago. Now, this is likely in southern Georgia, northern Iran, maybe into the Levant. It's not that it just happened once, but it happened within the same range of cohabitating years, right? It could have been going on for 1,000 or 2,000 or 3,000 years, where humans and Neanderthals were living in close quarters. But it's likely that this all happened very close to I guess, Eastern Europe, or close to the time when out of African humans were leaving Africa. Because, according to those genomic studies, that 2%-ish of Neanderthal DNA that a lot of Europeans and Asians and everybody out of Africa seems to have overlaps. It's the same. It's the same, and it's not been watered down through generational increases of Neanderthal interactions or decreases. It looks like it's the same event. So,
only one. And that's
now, that places the Aborigines of Australia in southern Georgia, northern Iran, somewhere in the Levant, at 40,000 years ago. Which means, of course, they can't be also in Australia 65,000 or even 55,000 years ago. So it's really messing up what was a story that was sold to them about, hey, we looked at your genome and it looks like, and the sites around here, and it looks like you're this old, and well, I gotta take it away because now that doesn't make sense anymore. However, the thing that is really interesting about this to me is that it doesn't change the dates of the sites or the tools. So, how do we explain the older sites in Australia that have to be older than the people that are there now, the main population? So it means that the current Australian population couldn't be more than probably 50,000 years old. Maybe a bit less than that. Could be,
but which is still 50,000 is still significant. It's still
everything's
but it's
significant.
not this,
but
it's not the 65,000, 70,000 that maybe were being suggested.
Yeah. Right. So it means that the out of Africa happened at the same time as the rest of the out of Africa. Not a group that left early and went directly to Australia, which was sort of one of the hypotheses. Now, they have I think it's like the second highest amount of Denisovan DNA, only beaten by the indigenous peoples of the Philippines. These are the two groups that have the highest Denisovan DNA. And from what I understood, the Denisovan DNA in the Philippines is different than that of Australia. A little bit different, and maybe more recent.
Well, if it's more recent, that would make sense. Yeah. Now what?
Now, here's the thing. Somebody was already in Australia before the current Aborigines got there. Because the site data stands currently, it's still human activity, stone tools, site data from multiple sites is still older now than the people who are there living currently have been there.
What happened to the people who were there?
Right. So it could be.
You'd expect that the people coming in that are there now, there would be genetic leftovers if they interbred with whoever was there previously. And
right. And we don't see that.
Yeah.
Well, we could be seeing that. So the way that we could be seeing that is that population that was the previous population of current modern humans may not have had an interbreeding event with Neanderthals, meaning they wouldn't be diluting or changing or altering that Neanderthal signal. So
but there could be other signals.
It could still be that there was a group of early humans 65,000, 70,000 years ago,
non-Neanderthal,
current modern humans that made it to Australia.
Before
it could also mean it could also mean that there were Denisovans already in Australia, and that's whose evidence we're seeing.
Yeah,
that's a possibility.
I could see that. Yeah.
Fascinating. Very unlikely that there were any Neanderthals. More and more, it's the case for Neanderthals, basically east of Iran, are very, very low. Because while we see these percentages of Neanderthal in current modern human populations in East Asia and Oceania and everywhere else east, they're the same event as everyone in Europe. It's the same.
Basically,
event.
Neanderthals were like, "I like this space. We're gonna hang out over here. We're not gonna we're not gonna move over these other areas."
The closer you get to Oceania, Australia, the closer you get to the Philippines, the higher the Denisovan content.
Yeah.
So, very fascinating. So, upending a little bit of current modern human history with some maybe more ancient current modern or
we don't know yet.
Human histories. No, it's and I think we talked about this before because like the whole one-time event didn't make sense with the older populations. Now, what else did I say I was going to bring? Oh, let's talk about Stonehenge.
Ooh, we always love this one.
Well,
Stonehenge
there's this one thing about Stonehenge.
It's made of rocks.
There's these things called the bluestones. And they're not the iconic, really giant standing ones. These are like smaller. But they came from some 200 kilometers away. They've been sourced very reliably to outcrops in Wales. 200 kilometers from the Salisbury Plain where Stonehenge is. Okay. There's been two versions of how they got there. One is, humans brought them all that distance, Gosh, what a long way to carry a bunch of giant rocks, right? And the other has been there was a glaciation event that moved the rocks there, and that they got incorporated because they were nearby, and that was it. And so it all comes down to this one bluestone called the Newall boulder, because that's who discovered it in 1924. And this one's interesting because it was the only one that's been found that was like dug up and discovered and wasn't already like sitting out in place and exposed for a long time. So it was the one that had the best chance of sort of identifying whether or not it looked, if it was brought by a glacier and that it was missed by the builders. And if it wasn't brought by a glacier, then it was left there by whoever brought it, and it should show signs. So anyway, they did a new analysis on it, and humans brought it. There's no sign in the entire region, apparently, on the plains of any glacial deposits, bluestones or otherwise. Like real thorough analysis.
Odd.
Yeah, like it would be the only stones that would have been brought, and they would have been left right, around Stonehenge. So that doesn't really make sense. Then they also looked at the weathering patterns and that sort of thing, and they could actually see, the stone looks like it broke off on one section, but it was actually worked over, modified on another part. And they think it was a broken off piece of a larger bluestone. That broke off there on site. So anyway, ancient humans carried stones 200 kilometers for reasons.
For
And
reasons that we do not know.
no, I think that would be like the real fascinating mystery to me of Stonehenge. Isn't like, I get like monolithic building. You got a bunch of big stones, build a thing, make it look cool. I get that. I want to know what the journey was. Was it months? Was it years? Did they, bring these giant stones along as like a makeshift dwelling as they trudged across ancient Britannia? Like, why? Did they have the plan that they were going to build a thing and then went looking for rocks, or did they think like, you know what? We like these rocks. No. Let's take them everywhere we go, no matter what we're doing. I want to know what that life on the road with the big rocks was like.
Well, it was a rocky road, but they had the stones to do it. So,
oh gosh, the pun machine that is Christian Sanford. And then I guess the last story I will bring, a Tumblr. Yeah, for tonight is, I'm only bringing this, by the way, because it was the most popular story that I've written. It's well over 1 million views. So people seem to be interested in the fact that a clinical trial shows taking blood pressure medication at night improves nocturnal and daytime control. So this is a research out of Sichuan University in China, revealed that bedtime antihypertensive medication dosing improves nocturnal blood pressure control over morning dosing in patients with hypertension. It also found that by taking it at night, there were less increases than the daytime users were doing. There was less chance of them needing to up their dosages. It's interesting that even though this is, again, a very current research study, a lot of people have anecdotally noticed this, and it's actually a recommendation, I think, in the Mayo Clinic. It's like one of the... So it's been noticed, that connection has been noticed before, but here's research that is reaffirming, or went to go look at the thing that people were noticing and then found, yeah, we actually see it when you do this bedtime dosing versus morning dosing. And it may have a lot to do with that circadian rhythm, right? So your blood pressure should naturally be going lower as you're going to bed and getting your sleep. But if you have hypertension and you took your meds in the morning, they may be staying kind of high at night. And that might be messing up that whole circadian rhythm. So, and then there's like a downstream effect of all sorts of other processes that may be relying on that rhythm to know when to do things and when to do work and when to be protective of your body. And anyway, it makes sense.
I think it's interesting too, though. If you're dosing at night before you go to sleep, then the blood pressure medication potentially has this window in which your body is going into a rest cycle, right? So the metabolism of the drug, the way it gets, however it gets accommodated by and used by the body, where it gets taken and put in, however it works, they're not moving around, except, if you're an active sleeper. But if you're doing a bedtime dosing, you're going to have 5 to 8 to 9 hours of not eating, not drinking anything, not exercising. Like your brain's still pretty active during that sleep cycle, but your whole body's kind of like, well, we're on a rest right now. So that aspect of the circadian rhythm is very important. But I've always wondered about, how drugs are metabolized, or supplements. People say you have to take this in the morning, that at night, this is it. But it's fascinating that this is actually one where they are showing this relationship to be bearing out with truth.
Yeah. It's also sort of interesting because one of the things they point out is that they have very unreliable typically have very unreliable data for what your nighttime blood pressure is, because you're not going into a doctor's office. Your doctor's office visits are during the day.
Yeah.
So, and taking
Your
it
stress hopefully is lower. I mean, people are like,
Yeah.
chill out. You should have bed hygiene, right? Or sleep hygiene.
Sleep hygiene.
Don't think about all the stressful things that pop into your head right before you're going to fall asleep. Just fall asleep.
Yeah.
It's totally normal. Falling asleep. It's what people do. Yeah, I think that's very interesting. All right, people, take your hypertension medication at night.
After consulting a doctor.
After consulting your doctor. Yes, exactly. Make sure that you do not make any health choices without consulting your medical doctor. But, it's great for you to be talking to us here at TWIS, listening to us. But take it to your doctor for show. Oh, it looks as though I have lost Justin. Maybe I'll bring him back here. Hold on. Where'd you go? You're back now. Did you hang up?
Yes, I closed the wrong tab.
Oopsies, I hung up.
Whoops.
This is funny, Kevbo. Ask your doctor if sleep is right for you.
Yeah. You might,
may include night terrors, night sweats, sleepwalking, sleep talking. You need to have some kind of side effects of sleep, drowsiness upon waking. Hours of time lost, never to return again. Benefits include maybe feeling rested, having slept. Okay, I will stop now. Oh my goodness. Rachel, you're going to have to edit all that out. Okay, now I have 3 stories.
There is a drug that doesn't exist, I don't think, that I would like. Because I want to be able to function on less sleep. But I don't need anything to help keep me awake. That's not what I'm asking for. I don't need more.
Just not sleep as much.
I want to take a drug that makes that 4 hours of sleep good enough.
Right, as
gets all the work
done
that you would get in an 8-hour sleep.
That's called a different genotype.
Just more efficient sleeping. No, I know, and because it exists, because people can do it, it should be drug targetable. I don't know why we're wasting all this time on diseases. We could save a lot more human hours by getting rid of all this sleeping.
I don't know why we need to save human hours when we are building artificial intelligences to replace us. I mean, come on. Isn't that all we need? Okay, I have stories.
I thought it was a lead-in.
No.
Tell me more. No.
No. I'm going to talk a little bit about brains before I talk about where moths like to lay their eggs.
I hope it's not in brains.
It's not in brains. No, I can tell you moths, the moths in the study, at least, they do not like to lay their eggs in brains. But when you just heard that, what memories do you pop up? Do you immediately start thinking about moths that you have known and loved? Or do you start thinking about, more, do you think of more meaningful stuff or more surface kind of things that are like, I saw a moth yesterday versus moths are nocturnal and moths are this, the death's head moth is a sign of blah, 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 whatever. Deeper concepts.
I picture a light bulb. There
we go.
I picture like a night light or not a door. What do you call it? Door light? Their outside light? What do you call it? Patio light?
The patio light. Yeah. Your porch light. Yeah. All
porch light. Thank you. That's what I'm picturing.
Researchers at the University of Geneva have asked the question, how does memory retrieve one type of memory or another? How does our brain decide, quote unquote, which memory to surface when other related information is presented to you? So in thinking about this, the researchers were specifically looking at two particular categories: surface level cues, which are commonalities that are just a moth, a brown moth, a white moth, different moths like lights. These are very surface level cues that you can bring, that your memory can bring to bear on surfacing one or more memories from your past. But what about what are called meaningful, structural, deeper, more conceptual memories? And which does our brain favor? Their research published in Wiley Interdisciplinary Reviews Cognitive Science, they determined, based on their studies, that our brain actually prioritizes conceptual, deeper memories, as opposed to somebody, you see an advertisement for cereal and you say, I had cereal for breakfast. That's a surface memory. But if you start thinking about conceptual aspects of harvest grains or, other conceptual aspects with your memories that are much deeper, in your brain actually prioritizes those. And so the researchers found this very interesting, in that if you can provide connections for people to create deeper, more conceptual, structural understandings of topics, deeper memories, that potentially you will lead individuals to surface those memories and have deeper, find deeper threads among topics within their daily life more and more often. So they approach this from the idea of developing teaching tools to introduce new mental categories, that if with teaching tools, the tools can encourage the formation of deep contextual links, that this could lead to greater understanding of course content or informational content. But even beyond that, I think it just gives some very interesting insight into that your brain is going for deeper understanding and concepts more often than it's just looking at like blue eyes, surface commonality. It's not just a pattern recognizer. It's not just that. And the memories that it is surfacing are usually, if they're there, if you have that link, your brain is going to give you something that's more rich.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, but wait a second.
Think deeply, everyone.
But wait a second.
No. Okay. What?
That's just like thought connotation, or like concept connotation. Like that's like, yes, that's obviously how the brain works.
Is it?
I sometimes, I get it. They're isolating.
It was
I think so.
Mm-hmm.
I think so. Because, maybe not. But I think it's got to be the majority of people. But it seems like one of those studies, like, when you were talking about this a while ago, or you and Blair were talking about this, about when science says there's no evidence for something, that doesn't necessarily mean it's proving that negative. It's maybe just saying we haven't looked at it yet.
Yep.
So it's good that they looked at this. But when they say this, it's also like animals show that they have some form of intelligence. Well, yeah. Yes, thank you. Yes, I feel like that's one of those. Didn't we just always know this? Isn't that how all of storytelling works?
Yeah. Yep. Abstraction, right? It's the high abstraction layer that our brain provides. Our brain really likes abstraction and concept and story, metaphor, as opposed to simple pattern recognition. Yeah. And in terms of knowledge transfer from one paradigm to another, that, you teaching in ways that lead to greater structural or understanding or greater abstraction of concepts is going to lead to easier transfer between paradigms, as opposed to, here are your multiplication tables, now divide. Or here are your multiplication tables. Now work in a grocery store. It's the transfer between the two is not as simple as so the abstraction is important for real knowledge transfer and understanding. That's basically what this is coming down to. And we've been friends for a very long time working on this stuff. Do you think that we are more in sync with ideas and with things that we talk about than we were when we first started hanging
Not
out doing
really.
the show? No. No.
Well, I think honestly, I think that that's why we started doing the show, is because we were like pretty in sync on a lot of these things.
Yeah.
Like in how we you know what I mean?
We talked a lot before the show happened.
There was a lot of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I don't know that we, even with the many years, I mean there's definitely aspects of like I can start to talk about a thing and you can be like, I know where you're going. I gotta say this. I know you're gonna say that. Like there's a little of that where we're in sync with what that conversation flow is going to be before it really unfolds sometimes. But interestingly, I think if you and I took a worldview poll 20 years ago and took it again today, I feel like we'd be pretty close.
Probably pretty close both times.
Yeah.
Well, thinking about that, there is some amount, we've talked about it on the show previously, there is some amount of brain synchronization, neural patterns in different areas of the brain that are synchronized between people who are friends. You have similar likes, dislikes, various, you like to talk about certain things, whatever. Your thought patterns, because you're able to talk and you're able to, share information and share experiences together as friends. And like you said, we can both predict, you're going to go here. Oh, you're going to do that now. We know each other. And this is because there are certain aspects of our brain, the activity in our brain, that are synced. My brain and your brain right now. And
I'm so sorry.
And
I apologize.
You listening right now,
apologize.
you watching the show, you listening right now, I bet we are synced if you have been, if you've been in the audience for a long time.
That's terrible news. I apologize to everybody. So for every time you see a word, and even though it's spelled out in front of you, you pronounce it like completely differently than the letters that are there. That's me. That's my influence, and I apologize that you synced with my part of the brain that just takes wild stabs at pronouncing things.
But it's also predicting what the other person is going to be doing, right? So because our brains are prediction engines, I'm in sync with you, and I go, he's going to take a wild. I see that word. He's going to mispronounce that. I know. And I wait for it.
It's like I can't read the word if I don't know it. And I start to pronounce it based on the first few letters. And then I panic 4 letters in. It's complete panic. And I'm like, throw a dart. Just throw a dart. See if you can land it anywhere near the rest of the word. And I don't know why that happens.
It's because
every time.
You were a victim of the 1970s to 80s experiments in reading education.
Oh, it could be. Well, no, I think honestly, I think it has to do with a topic that we've talked about quite a few times, which is visualizing words versus visualizing images.
Yeah. Holistically,
I'm a complete 100% image person who can't. Like you've heard about the people
like
who
letters versus holistic word. Do you see the word or do you see it in with each of its letters? You go letter by letter.
I can't hold a word in mind. Like people maybe have experienced trying to read something in a dream and not being able to. I can't hold a word in my head and see it either, even like completely awake. I can't. I just cannot.
I have words like I can repeating in my head constantly. It's a
verbally
cacophony
audio
in here.
Audio, yes, but not like I can't see a word. in my mind, and I don't know why that is. It's made me terrible at names. I can't remember names of things. I would love to, if I could choose, I would be a botanist. But I can't remember the name of any plant. This is the leafy plant versus the kind of pokey fern plant. I don't know what it's called. That's the problem. I can't remember.
I know lots of
people's
things about
names
it,
too.
But yeah.
I can tell you the story of the plant, but I can't ever remember what it's called.
So,
how do I spell? Very badly.
Yeah. So anyway, friendship brain. All of us, we all have friendship brain, according to this new paper in the Journal of Neuroscience. Researchers have written up their work about brain synchronization and consumer behavior. So the better friend that you are, the more your friendship bond grows, the more similar your evaluations of products become. And also, the more synchronized your brain activity is in regions linked to perception, memory, and reward. So in the abstract for the paper, they say that neuroimaging and meta-analytic decoding indicated that there's heightened neural synchrony linked to cognitive functions like object perception, attention, memory, social judgment, and reward processing. And that they used stacked machine learning based predictive models. They showed that functional connectivity maps of the brain and the activity predicted the purchase intention of their friends or their own purchasing intents, but not strangers. We're not good at predicting what strangers want to buy, but we can predict what I know you're going to love. You're going to love. Dr. Justin's not a real doctor. Poo pills.
They're for what ails you.
Or for what ails you. That's right. But anyway, brains, the more you are friends, the more your brains are in sync, the better you can predict your friends' likes, dislikes, wants, needs. And the same for them of you. This is good. This is social connectivity. So now, let me ask you one final question before the end of this show, Justin. If you were a moth trying to figure out where you were going to lay your eggs, you're like, I'm going to put my little moth eggs somewhere.
Tokyo.
On a plant, maybe.
Tokyo.
I'm not saying not Tokyo. Say you're a moth, though. Would you put
that's what I'm picturing.
Would you put your eggs in the place with lots of screaming or the place without screaming?
Regardless of what type of organism I am, I feel like
where would you
I would be gravitating towards places with less screaming.
Right.
That would be my guess.
I like places with less screaming as well, unless, of course, it is a haunted house I'm going to on Halloween or
even then, I don't need that.
An amusement park, roller coasters. Yeah. So anyway,
that's what I was thinking. Mothra.
Surprise, surprise, surprise. Surprise, 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 surprise. I'm really not surprised. Researchers have published in the journal eLife their study of moths and where they want to lay their eggs. They gave them all sorts of options, and it was based on a previous study in which they discovered that plants scream. So when plants are stressed out, like they're dehydrated or they've been bitten, that they scream. And the researchers, and we talked about this a little bit, and it's not screaming per se. I mean, it's definitely outside the range of human hearing, but there are sounds that are made by plants when they're stressed out, I love that it's been sensationalized into plant screaming for the good of the study. And so I'm just gonna play you the sounds of plant screaming.
What? I still didn't hear it.
You hear that tick?
No, I think I'm
Let me see if
I'm
I
too
can.
old of a man
I don't
to
think
hear
so.
that
Oh, it
anymore.
completely changed. Yes.
The kids
Well,
out there are probably going like, "Oh gosh, oh, it's
It's
so
not.
terrible."
Well, let me see if it should share audio.
Like the
Let's
mosquito
you
frequency.
try again. Turn up your headphones.
It's Morse code.
It sounds like
I need water. ASAP.
I find it interesting that the video is a recording of plant sounds being made by a cactus, and they're talking about being stressed out from being thirsty.
Mhm.
Oh, you spiky succulent, you. Anyway, this is what it sounds like to a moth. And
That's
so the
amazing.
researchers,
What is making that sound?
it is the release of compounds that when the plants are cut or they are or they've been damaged or they are dehydrated, stressed out, they emit popping or clicking noises there that are at these ultrasonic frequencies, and it could be the pores. It could be all sorts of it could be different things that impact
This is
what
what it
actually is
sounds
making the
like
sound
when
when
shrubs
plants
cry.
scream. When shrubs cry. When plants scream. Years ago, they found out that
Nice.
plants can detect sound, so they looked at whether or not the plants could produce sound, and so they determined that these plants they're emitting popping or clicking noises that are too high pitched for us to hear, but these stressed plants are making these sounds. It's not clear how they're being produced, though. So that's one of the next questions. We don't know exactly why, but they are making the noises. And so then the researchers said, what about other animals who might be able to hear the frequencies of the sounds being released by the plants?
Mm-hmm.
And so they're like, hey, let's look at some moths that like to lay their eggs on plants. And so they had two boxes, no plants whatsoever, and they had one box, and the moths wanted to go lay their eggs somewhere. They put one box that had playing a recording of screaming plants, and the other one that didn't. And it was a higher than chance result that they went into the box with the screaming plants. The screaming plants. They went there and they spent more of their time in the screaming plant box. Remember, there's no plant in there, it's just the sound. And so then the next experiment they did was to move a little bit further and to see whether or not the moths were interested in plants that were stressed or not stressed. So they weren't playing the recordings. They actually had the plants. So first, boxes, no plants. Second, plants, stressed, no stress. And the moths selected the plants that were not stressed out. So what they think is the screaming indicated there were plants, whereas the silent box, the no screaming, is no plants. So screaming plants are better than no plants if you want to lay your eggs.
Okay.
And they did a number of different alterations.
So that means that healthy plants might be making a sound too? Different?
Not that sound, maybe a different sound, but
sound?
they haven't recorded that. They haven't seen that. They have recorded healthy plants and they haven't found a sound that's like this popping screaming noise apparently.
But that would have to be
Mm-hmm.
the right? Wouldn't that have to be the impetus to go to the screaming one because at least you heard some plants there? If it was
Right.
if the plants are normally silent, you'd still go look for them.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
So you're looking for your plants, right? So you're going
Yeah.
to find the screamy ones. But then when you are given the option of a stressed plant and a not stressed plant, then you're going to take the not stressed plant. And when they, on the third time, they
Plants purr.
put the moths back in the boxes, and they said instead of the plant noises, they put in male moth mating calls against nothing. And they found that the female moths who already wanted to lay eggs were not interested in the male
No.
mating calls.
No,
So
we're done with that.
the moths can hear. The moths differentiate between sounds they're interested in and not interested in. The moths choose plants over no plants, if that's the only option, and they would rather not choose the male screaming moths, but they do prefer to lay their eggs on unstressed plants. So anyway, if you would like to keep moths from laying their eggs on your plants, you should stress them out. So your plants will be screaming all the time, but you couldn't hear it, but the moths will. This is why all of us who have not very green thumbs in this world and have plants that are just like scrawny and whatever, we're doing great. The moths are not laying eggs on our plants. It's great. It's perfect. I didn't know this was a strategy of mine until now. I am protecting my plants by not watering them regularly. I try.
Yeah.
Anyway, this is the first evidence of moths tuning into plant acoustic signals.
Yeah, I've
Which
heard about
is
plants
wild.
tuning into insect acoustics, but I've never heard it
Well,
the other way around.
Yep.
They're talking to each other.
Yeah.
Wild.
Yep. Yep. So the plants are listening. The plants are talking. The moths are talking and listening. Like everybody, it's a noisy world out there.
Yeah.
So everyone sleep well. Surrounded by your screaming plants, knowing that they are not going to be interesting to the moths. Not today. Not today. Thank you for listening, everybody, tonight. Thank you for being here. I think we've done it. Have we, Justin?
I think we've come to the end of yet another episode of This Week in Science.
We have done it. All right, everyone. So at this point in time, I do like to say thank you. Thank you, all of you in the chat room. Thank you for being here, for talking, for sharing, for commenting on my wonderful large glasses. Yes, I know I'm wearing very large glasses tonight. I broke my better regular smaller reading glasses. I need to get them. I need a new pair of reading glasses. Maybe like a real pair of grown-up glasses someday. I don't know. We'll see what happens. I don't like glasses. I don't know. This is like, I don't know. I'm just going to wear an optical face mask in the future.
It's like a face shield almost. See that going.
I know. It's super fun though. I can have like googly eyes.
Hypnotic hypnotoad eyes.
Yeah. So thank you all for being here and joining us for our hypnoscience episode full of misinformation. Thank you so much for joining us. And I have to give the shout outs for sure to all of you for keeping it civil, being respectful. Thanks, Aaand, Laura, Gord, others who make sure that everybody's being nice to each other. Be kind, be thoughtful, have fun, right? Be curious. Let's all do well in this world together with each other. And I do have to shout out also, Fada, thank you so much for your help with social media and show notes. I know sometimes things show up last minute. It's just always a great help, the help that you give. Identity 4, thank you for recording the show. And Rachel, thank you for editing the show. And thank you to our Patreon sponsors. I have to do a thing now and get over to this one thing way over here and say share this tab instead. Thank you to Robert Norland, Robert W. Farley, Lauren Gifford, Dana Lewis, Eden Mundell, Alan Viola, Aaron Anathema, Arthur Kepler, Craig Potts, Mary Gerst, Teresa Smith, Richard Badge, Bob Coles, Kent Northcote, George Corris, Pierre Velizarb, John Ratnaswamy, Chris Wozniak, Vigard Chefstad, Donathan Stiles, Ali Koff, aka Don Stylo, Ali Coffin, Schubert, Don Mundus, PIG, Stephen Alberon, Daryl Myshak, Andrew Swanson, Fredus 104, Paul Ronovich, Kevin Reardon, Noodles, Jack, Brian Carrington, David E. Youngblood, Sean Clarence Lamb, John McKee, Greg Riley, Mark Hessenflow, Steve Leisman, aka Zima, Ken Hayes, Howard Tan, Christopher Rappin, Richard, Brendan Minish, Johnny Gridley, Remy Day, G. Wharton Lattimore, Flying Out, Christopher Dreyer, Artyom, Greg Briggs, John Atwood, Rudy Garcia, Dave Wilkinson, Rodney Lewis, Paul, Philip Shane, Kurt Larson, Craig Landon, Sue Doster, Jason Olds, Dave Neighbor, Eric Knapp, Lon Makes, E.O., Adam Mishkan, Kevin Parachan, Bob Calder, Marjorie, Paul D. Disney, Patrick Pecoraro, and Tony Steele. Thank you for all of your support on Patreon. And if you are not a Patreon supporter yet and would like to be, head over to twis.org and click on the Patreon link. I want to read your name.
Okay.
Come on. Let's get it in there. On next week's show,
Put my name in there. We will be back Wednesday, 8 p.m. Pacific time, broadcasting live from our Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook channels.
Want to listen to us?
Listen to us
keep
as
going.
a podcast?
Do it.
Wow, you highlighted one, so I figured you weren't showing up until way over there.
Nope.
Want to listen to us as a podcast? Just Google This Week in Science in wherever podcasts are found these days. And if you enjoyed the show, get your friends to subscribe as well. For more information on anything you've heard here today, show notes, links to stories are available on our website, www.twis.org, where you can also sign up for a newsletter that may or may not ever show up.
It'll show. It really will. I know it will. This is
still is it still me?
Yeah.
We love your feedback. If there's a topic you would like us to cover or address, a suggestion for an interview, a haiku that comes through the night, please let us know. Just be sure to put TWIS, TWIS, somewhere in your subject line. Otherwise, your email will be spam filtered into a screaming plant.
You'll run screaming from it. Ah.
Is it still? I got more. Oh, gosh. Oh, yeah. We look forward to discussing science with you again next week. And if you have learned anything from the show, remember,
it's all in your head and your friends.
This week in science. This week in science. This week in science. This week in science, it's the end of the world. So I'm setting up shop, got my banner unfurled. It says the scientist is in, I'm gonna sell my advice. Show them how to stop the robots with a simple device. I'll reverse global warming with a wave of my hand. And all it'll cost you is a couple of grand. 'Cause this week's science is coming your way. So everybody listen to what I say. I use the scientific method for all that it's worth. And I'll broadcast my opinion all over the earth. 'Cause it's This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science. 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 This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science. 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 I've got one disclaimer and it shouldn't be news. That what I say may not represent your views.
Oh my goodness. There it was, folks.
We made
Another
it.
episode of This Week in Science. Episode 10,230. Is that right?
No.
What is it?
10:23 on 7:23.
Oh my goodness.
I thought it was really nice that, that we decided to get in tune with the numbers. So, by not having a show last week, it enabled us to have our 1023rd show on July 23rd.
July? What is happening? Did we add a new month?
What is
Is it
time
13
anyway?
months now?
July. Do not spread this misinformation, friends.
Is this a fake thought in my head? Talk about misinformation. Let's see. I'm going to see.
What thought? This is like a great game. I love this.
Right. Because I think if I'm right, yeah, I am right. We should have 13 months. We had 13 months. Every month would be 4 weeks.
Yeah, isn't this a conversation we've had before? That's like it's a different base system, but yeah.
No, it's not a different base anything. It's just a calendar. 13 months. They could all have 4 weeks.
Mm-hmm. And then you wouldn't have to remember 30 days have September, April, June, and November. All the rest have 31, save February, which has 28, except on leap year.
All those people on salary would, make this be for
every month
make an
would
extra
be
month. Extra month the salary a year.
I think they get paid by.
Why do we have 12? We need a 13th month. Make them all 4 weeks long. This is ridiculous. This whole
people have suggested
12 dozenal, ancient dozenal system. 13 is the right number.
I mean, come on. We've got 12 fingers.
We could call it July. June, July.
June, July, lie. Paul, Disney uses knuckles to remember the lengths of each month. But what happens, and this has nothing to do with testosterone levels. It's just
well, isn't that the dozenal system is the knuckles? Or where's that? That's the right? Because it's
July 1, 2, is my favorite
3,
week
4, 5,
of the
6,
year.
7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. That's how that. You can count a dozenal system on one hand, and then you
while
can keep
holding something on a other hand,
yeah,
like a horse or a cow.
What? Why are you holding cows
with the other hand?
Why?
Because I'm calculating the sale price on one hand and holding the cow with another.
Oh, I thought you were counting the cow. And I'm like, that's going to be easy. If you got one cow, it's going to be one.
No.
One thing.
No, I don't do that. Isn't it interesting? Most people, I think, in the United States, we count with the pointer finger first. But is it the rest of the world starts with the thumb?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
1, 2, 3.
Mm-hmm. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Yeah.
Well, we'll see.
Paul Disney. Oh my gosh. You're hilarious. That's really funny. All right. It is 10:40. Our internets are working. We have here at home some new stuff. I find it very interesting. I got some announcements from Bitdefender that a suspicious connection. Somebody wanted to make a connection.
I have a new ailment.
A half hour ago. Who was it? Contextual.
See, this is called trigger finger.
Unmatching securities.
Are you seeing this?
What?
Okay. See my hand?
Mm-hmm.
This is a new ailment I have called trigger finger.
What?
Yeah. So there's a problem with the sheathing.
Oh, does it get locked?
The tendon.
Does it get locked?
It's just, I'm not, my hand's totally relaxed, but this finger is locked until I can undo it. and then it's free again.
It's stuck. Yeah.
But I can
Yeah.
sometimes lock it into that place now, and it will just stay there. Yeah, it's like the Spider-Man disease. It's like, it's from web slinging. That's how you develop it. You're right. That's how I got it.
I am Spider-Man. Mm.
But it's Davis is a terrible place to be a web slinger because there's like almost nothing over a 2-story building. So you only get like a couple 20 yards down the road at a time. It's really exhausting.
You're funny. Was your week good last week? Your night off? Did you get rest?
Week off. Oh no, I was
Last week?
I was exhausted. I was completely and totally had no energy, and I slept, and I was still tired the next day,
Oh.
even after getting sleep. It was so pointless to have sleep.
Well, I'm glad that you got sleep. I'm glad I was able to have my evening off. Was wonderful because I got to be with my dad, and that's not all the time. It was good. Last week was good. It was good.
But you just reminded me
Family.
that I still
It's
have
family.
I still have work to do, and then I
Oh
have
boy,
to
you have to write
sleep
an
and wake up
article,
and do
don't
other
you?
work.
Yeah,
I've got
because
some
you work
writing
all
to
the
do,
time now.
and
Yeah, I have work to do also. I'm
and
not gonna do it. I'm gonna go to bed.
so, thanks for hanging out with us, everybody. Thanks for coming and join the show. We will see you
Yeah.
again next week. Same
What are you
bat
writing
time,
about?
Same.
The bat signal.
It will be something to do with male contraceptive pharmaceutical.
Ooh. Oh yeah, I think I saw a story about that. I'm glad you're writing about it.
Non-hormonal male contraceptive YCT-529.
Yeah. Non-hormonal. What? Fascinating.
Pharmacological thingamadealio. I can just tell you right now, they studied it for safety, and they're like, it's fine.
It's great. It works. Yay!
Like that's.
Hey boys.
Well, I don't know. I don't know how well it works. It's not.
It's just
But it
safe.
doesn't
It's
do
not
apparently any obvious harm under the things that they
good.
tested in this thing. That's all I really can tell you. But it's like, I wish I could write the article that way. It'd be so much quicker. They tested it. It's fine. That's really what you need to know. It's fine.
It's all
They looked
good.
at some stuff.
They tested it. You're good. We're all good. Everyone's good.
It didn't change anybody's diet. Didn't change anybody. Nobody had a heart attack. No hormonal differences were noticed. It's fine.
No atherosclerosis.
You take it.
No imidazole.
But they didn't look at that.
I'm gonna go sleep.
They didn't look at
Don't look at it.
that.
All
No
right.
effects on the heart rate.
Go write your story. It sounds like you know what you're gonna write.
Yeah. I just. Well, actually, you know what my least favorite thing to write about is? My least favorite?
Stories that are easy. Wait, dinosaurs?
New dinosaur discoveries are the most annoying thing to write about in the whole world. Because the way that they identify something can be called a new dinosaur is by
not
this
a dinosaur.
long list of comparatives with other things that are basal or not basal, and based on this bone and that nodule is basal, and it's a collection of like 100 points of different basal, non-basal morphological discussions.
Yep.
It's so much nicer if they had like dinosaur DNA, then it wouldn't have to sit through
That's what they have to do.
Paleontological gobbledygook speak.
Yeah, but
at the end you get a dinosaur, which is always fun. Which is you just get a new dinosaur, which is always fun. But oh gosh, getting there.
Maybe it's just a baby dinosaur. Maybe it's a grown-up dinosaur. We need to parse it with a tiny knife. Go get there. You don't have a dinosaur story tonight, so that's good.
No dinosaur stories. No
Great.
dinosaur stories. And then,
Great. Oh,
this one's
that's
going to
good.
be kind of, yeah. Oh my gosh, but here's a little bit of the background. Do you want to hear something interesting? According to this background in the research paper, nearly half of all pregnancies in the US and worldwide are unintended.
I know. Not everybody plans pregnancies all the time. Some people do.
The other half are male. Gotcha. Oh, I gotcha.
Oh,
that was
you
good. I
did. Oh my God.
Oh, that was terrible.
That was
Awful,
really
terrible
bad.
joke. All right, I gotta go, everybody. Thank
Head
you
on
again for
out.
hanging out.
Thank you for
I
hanging
might have
out.
to try to write
Thank
this
you,
story in
and
the
you,
morning.
and
I
you.
might not be able to do it right now.
Just write yourself an outline. Write down the things you just said to me. Like, just get the transcript. It's at least like, what, 200 words? Anyway. All right, everybody.
It's gonna be. I got it like 4 to 6. I think is where, but not this one. This one won't be more than 3. There's not a whole lot of in-depthness that needs to be done to it.
No, and you shouldn't have to add in-depthness just to hit more words. Anyway.
No.
Hey, good night.
It's nothing that you add to it.
Yeah.
If anything, usually I'm taking away a bunch of words that they say.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, you don't have to like explain everything. Just tell me what it is. Really, if I was writing this one though, it's a validation, efficacy, safety study kind of. It's not even an efficacy study. It's not even validation.
No, it's just
the safety. It's just the safety trial.
Yeah. It's the first.
Here's what they were looking
trial,
for,
right?
And it didn't do bad things. It didn't do them. Perfect. Bye. Out.
I mean, if you want to add anything to it, it would be just maybe a couple of sentences about the importance of safety trials.
Maybe. Maybe. Hey, do you want to learn about the never mind. All right, I gotta go.
I want to learn about so many things. You're so good. Go write, go sleep, go rest. Go have a great day of work tomorrow, and look forward to talking with you again next week.
Yeah.
If not before.
See you then.
Yeah. Say goodnight, Justin.
Good night, Justin. Good night, Kiki.
Good night, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We will see you again next Wednesday, 8 p.m.-ish Pacific time, Twitch, YouTube, Facebook, and on the podcastings. Stay safe, stay rested, stay curious, and stay lucky. Bye. I hit the end stream button, didn't I? It's not